Good evening. This right here is what's known as a ballot drop box. And according to the election watchdog group that was featured in the new film called 2000 Mules, well, it looks like different left-wing foundations, as well as many different NGOs, they made, you can say, creative use of these ballot drop boxes during the 2020 election. That's because, according to True the Vote, which is the election watchdog group that was featured in the film, and they used cell phone geo-trafficking data, they used surveillance footage, as well as interviews with the actual ballot mules themselves, in order to map out what appears to be an illegal ballot harvesting scheme that played itself out across multiple states. And because of their research, the individual states are now beginning to launch their own investigations. Let's go through some of them together. Although, just as a super quick aside, I wanted to mention that I actually got a chance to sit down and speak with both Greg and Catherine from True the Vote, and I had a chance to interview them about all their findings as well as the next steps that they're going to take. It's an absolutely awesome hour-long interview, and if you'd like to check it out for yourself, it's over exclusively on Epoch TV. I'll throw a link to it. It'll be right there at the very top of the description box. And now, let's move on over to the state of Arizona, where the Yuma County Sheriff has just announced the opening of a new 2020 voter fraud investigation. Now, specifically, this was the same county that was actually featured in the film 2000 Mules, and if you watch that film, this was the county where the whistleblower, the one who sat there but you couldn't see her face but she was giving her testimony, and she was the one who said, among many other things, that she might have deposited well over 100 ballots herself. And according to an announcement that was made by the Yuma County Sheriff's Office, they now have officially teamed up with the county recorder in order to investigate the possible 2020 election fraud. In fact, as a part of this press release, the Sheriff's Office revealed that they already have 16 open cases. Here's specifically what they wrote as a part of the statement. Quote, as of March 2022, the Yuma County Sheriff's Office has 16 voting/registration open cases. All relevant evidence is being formally documented by the Yuma County Recorder's Office and further investigated by the Yuma County Sheriff's Office. Then, in terms of what these cases are all about, while this particular statement does not provide any concrete case details, meaning things like names, dates, and so on, it does give 4 examples of the types of voter fraud that they found and that they are currently investigating, which includes 1, impersonation fraud. This is when someone votes in the name of another legitimate voter, or perhaps a voter who has died or moved out of the state. Then, the Sheriff's Office is also investigating cases of false registrations, which is when someone falsifies voter registrations by either using a fake name, a fake birth date, or a fake address. And they mention in the statement that this is being done by what they refer to as outreach groups who are being paid for each registration that they get. Here's in fact very specifically what they wrote in the statement. Quote, this is being done by outreach groups who are paid for each registration form they submit, therefore are out soliciting voters into unnecessarily re-registering or falsifying forms with Yuma County residents' identities. Then the Sheriff's Office is also looking at cases of duplicate voting, which is when someone either submits multiple votes or registers in multiple locations or votes in the same election more than once. And then lastly, the Sheriff's Office is investigating cases of fraudulent use of absentee ballots, which they describe as being one of 2 things. Here's specifically how this statement breaks down what exactly is the fraudulent use of absentee ballots. Quote, requesting absentee ballots and voting without the knowledge of the actual voter, or obtaining the absentee ballot from a voter and either filling it in directly and forging the voter's signature, or illegally telling the voter who to vote for. And by the way, just as an interesting aside, prior to the 2020 election, I was actually over in Maricopa County, Arizona, and I was interviewing people. I was trying to get a sense of which way the political winds were blowing in terms of how people will vote ahead of the election. And I had a super interesting interview with a homeless guy who was over there on the streets of Phoenix. And what he told me really surprised me. Here's that part of that interview. Going to vote by mail or in person?
In person.
Do you have any concerns about the mail?
Yeah, because somebody might get a hold of it and maybe change it up. Even the ballots they do out here to sign up, those might be fraud too. You know? 'Cause I think I signed about 2 of them. Not for Biden. for other people. I don't know who they were. But one was for, I think Republican. But they told me just go ahead and sign it. That's all I know right there. I just gotta watch out for the ballots. Yeah. In person's pretty good.
And so as you can see, there were clearly some shenanigans afoot. And perhaps with investigations like these playing out across different counties in Arizona, we can actually get to the bottom of what happened. And what's interesting to note is that according to Mr. Dinesh D'Souza, who is of course the producer of 2000 Mules, the alleged Yuma County ballot mule, the one who was interviewed in the film 2000 Mules, is in fact cooperating with the authorities for this Yuma County investigation. Here's specifically what Dinesh D'Souza told the reporters over at Just the News in an interview just a few days ago. Quote, "It's so great that in that exact venue, meaning Yuma County, the sheriff has now announced a new investigation. It seems to be a direct response to the work both of True the Vote and the movie." So this idea that the movie is making all these outlandish claims, law enforcement doesn't even have to look at it, complete nonsense. And this, I hope, is only the first step. And then furthermore, Ms. Catherine Engelbrecht, who is the founder of True the Vote, she released her own statement shortly after this investigation was announced over in Yuma County, praising the Arizona sheriff. Here's what she said. "We are extremely encouraged that the Yuma County Sheriff's Office and Recorder's Office are now working together to investigate individuals involved in the subversion of elections. We've spent concentrated time in Yuma County and have provided significant information to both state and federal authorities. What has been happening in Yuma County is happening across the country. The targeting of vulnerable communities and voter abuse must be stopped." Furthermore, it's worth noting that this Yuma County investigation comes after Arizona's Attorney General, Mr. Mark Brnovich, after he indicted about half a dozen people on illegal ballot harvesting charges not too long ago. And also back in December, the Arizona Attorney General, Mr. Mark Brnovich, he also announced the indictment of 2 ballot harvesters from Yuma County. They were actually caught because of the fingerprints that they left behind on the ballots, which is worth mentioning is very likely why, after they were arrested, you saw other ballot mules across the entire country begin to wear surgical gloves. Regardless, though, we'll have to wait and see whether this new investigation in Yuma County goes anywhere. And if it does, and as soon as new details are released, I will let you know right away. Furthermore, Yuma County has a website where you can actually go and leave anonymous tips if you know anything about ballot harvesting that took place. I'll leave that link down in the description box below this video so you can leave an anonymous tip if you have one. And now, let's switch gears a little bit and move on over to the state of Michigan, where about 4 days ago, police officers took custody of a voting machine as a part of their investigation into possible voting breaches. Now, specifically, this occurred in Irving Township, where both Michigan State Police, as well as officials with the Michigan's Attorney General's office, they seized a voting tabulator as a part of their investigation into what they described as unauthorized access to election equipment. Now, we here at the Epoch Times, we actually did reach out to the township supervisor, and he got back to us via email saying this, quote, "The township intends to fully cooperate with law enforcement, and the township attorneys have been in contact with the Michigan State Police regarding this matter. The township has no further comment at this time." Now, this investigation was actually launched earlier this year at the request of Michigan's Secretary of State, Ms. Jocelyn Benson. She's a Democrat. And according to her official statement, she decided to launch this investigation because of allegedly, quote, "An unnamed third party was allowed to access vote tabulator components and technology in Roscommon County. Michigan law is clear about the security threats that emerge when anyone gains unauthorized access to our election machines or technology, and I will have no tolerance for those who seek to illegally tamper with our voting equipment." However, since making that statement, Lieutenant Derek Carroll of the Michigan State Police, well, he indicated that this probe, whatever it actually is, has gone way beyond Roscommon County. Here's specifically what he said in a statement to Reuters, quote, "As we found out more information, we've expanded our area to see if any other places were compromised. We have gone to other regions." Now, at this very moment, it's completely unclear who actually this breacher was, how they got access to the voting machines, and generally it's unclear about what's going on with this investigation in general, since the office has been refusing to disclose any details. The only thing that we do know is that the state police made a point to mention that, quote, "The probe will continue until we have exhausted all leads. The possible unauthorized access did not in any way affect the 2020 election." That is very reassuring. Regardless, though, if you'd like to read more about the seizure of election equipment over in Michigan, I'll throw that link down into the description box below. And now, regarding the movie 2000 Mules, sorry, what's this? It's me. Of course it's Sekur, because we use the Sekur app, which is the sponsor of today's episode, as well as an awesome email and message service provider that actually cares about your privacy. Now listen, it's no big secret that our data is being mined and remined all the time. In fact, there was a recent study that was published in the year 2020, which found that 155 million Americans, likely including you and me, have suffered some form of data breach. And frankly, that's only what's publicly known. However, all those past problems with privacy issues and data mining, well, that can be an issue of the past, because moving forward, you can use the Sekur app, which both your messages, your emails, and your phone calls can remain private. That's because they have their servers and their data centers located in Switzerland instead of in the US or China or Russia. And why does that matter? Because Switzerland has the strictest data privacy laws in the entire world, and they are not subject to the intrusive Cloud Act. Now, what I love the most about the Sekur app is that they don't collect my data, they don't mine my data, they don't mine the data and phone numbers of my friends and family. Everything is private. And best of all, at least in my opinion, This does not work with your big tech email provider just because it is not secure. And so check it out. You can head on over to Sekur.com, and if you use promo code Roman, you can get 25% off. And frankly, their rates are not even that expensive. It only starts with $5 for the messenger and $10 for the email and messenger combo. And best of all, they offer a 7-day free trial. And now, regarding the movie 2000 Mules, as I mentioned at the beginning of today's episode, we just published an exclusive interview between myself and Catherine Engelbrecht and Greg Phillips, the team behind the research, and that interview was absolutely awesome. Here's a trailer for it.
You got dirty rolls, you got mail ballots, and then in the 11th hour, suddenly we have these privately funded drop boxes.
There's sort of a central point where those ballots were being delivered, and then someone or the mules were taking them to the polls and putting them in these drop boxes. There are both international and sort of national type foundations that have found ways to get money in a variety of fashions into these communities. Big money, like billions.
If this is true, why aren't there already investigations happening? What about just a fair process is so troubling that you go out of your way to cover this up?
I'd love to say that there's no politics at the highest levels of the FBI or some of the other agencies that are involved, but it's just not true.
This is just the tip of the iceberg.
Now, if you'd like to watch that interview in its glorious entirety, you can do so over on Epoch TV, which is our awesome no-censorship video platform. If you'd like to check it out, I'll throw the link. It'll be right there at the very top of the description box for you to check out. And I really hope that you do, because both their movie, as well as their initial research, well, it's just the beginning. In fact, during that interview, we discussed the next steps that they're taking, as well as the next steps that you and I, the American citizens, can take in order to help secure America's elections. If you want to check out that interview and see what they had to say, well, that link will be right there at the very top of the description box. And then until next time, I'm your host, Roman from the Epoch Times. Stay informed and stay free.